What's going on, guys? Kai here. Today we're doing an updated guide on wills. We're going to talk about the cores and generations. I've gotten a lot of questions recently and a lot of new players coming in. Need to tell you guys what's going on. Let's get into it. Alright guys, the first thing we should start with is the will cores and their kind of structure, what's going on here. First, you're going to have the basic attributes, which is up here, HP and attack, pretty common. It could be a different stat, but for the generations, but for all the cores, it's going to be HP and attack. For gold, like this one right here, or yellow, whatever you want to call it, the max HP is going to be 1280, which is what we're seeing right here at plus 35, and attack is going to be 384, with purple, it's going to be 173 attack and 574 HP once they're maxed out. This will always be the same as long as you max them out. You'll see a big thing here is the plus 25 and the plus 35. That comes into play for the core skill and the additional attributes, which technically the core skill is an additional attribute, as you see right here. And to explain that, the core skill is the thing we're actually looking for. It's possible to have these will cores that have no core skill. What's actually happening is part of the additional attributes. So what happens is it starts with 2 stats at purple and 3 stats at gold down here. And what happens is every plus 5, plus 5, plus 10, plus 15, plus 20, there's another roll. This is the RNG aspect. And every one could either make a core skill. There can only be one core skill on a core. It could plus the core skill. So for example, this one started with God Bless 1. So it had 5 rolls, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 go onto God Bless. And then another 2, because 30 and 35 went to other stats. In this case, one went to HP steal rate, one went to ignore block, which this is a really good one to have right here. This is a pretty good one. Now, these core skills can go up to level 12. And so the idea at late game is to have 2 level 6s of the same one, which if they're on 2 of your deployed fairies, then you have a level 12. We will show the full level effects and what they do down below once we get there, but this is ideally what you're looking for. The biggest difference between gold and purple is obviously the base stats, but the number of rolls. So at plus 25, they only had 5 rolls. Makes it less possible to get good rolls. For example, this one right here, Instinct level 1, had 5 rolls. None of them went to Instinct, and most of them went to HP and Defense. So we're missing out on some stats here. Then we have the will generations. Now, this is set up very similarly. The only rolling is down here on the additional attributes. There is no rolling as far as the set effect. We have the 2 set bonus and the 4 set bonus. 2 set bonus is if you have 2 remaining ash break freeze on your fairy, then you will get that bonus stat. If you have all 4, then you get the actual effect that you're looking for. Generally, you're going to want to have 4 set bonuses, so you can actually have them all together. We'll talk about the actual effects themselves and what it means down here. But the actual attribute right here is interesting because this does change. Right here, the top basic attribute, and down here, the additional attribute can be different. Slot 1, as you see, this is remaining Ash 1. Slot 1 and slot 2 will always be HP, but can be crit or break. Whereas, see, this is slot 2, which is on break. And then slot 3 or 4 is always going to be defense instead of HP. And it could be the defensive one, which is either tenacity or block. So that's a little bit of RNG, but primarily you're rolling on the additional attributes down here very similarly to what we talked about before. So this is 35, so you would have 7 rolls to increase these stats down below. It has nothing to do with the 2-set bonus and 4-set bonus. Now, first we'll walk through all of the wills, talk about how they work, and then we'll talk about the generations down here and how they work. Alright, starting from the top, we have, let's make sure you can see this. I'll make it bigger. Alright. So, Fierce Attack level 1, and then we also have Fierce Attack level 12. That is a core skill, and that's what we talked about before up here. So we're talking about this level 1 versus what it does at 12, which is having 2 level 6s together, and why they're important. Fierce Attack. After a normal attack or skill hits 3 times, this also counts if you have a skill that hits multiple times. This will count. Deals additional damage equal to 1.5% of target's current HP. No more than 10.5% of your attack towards the target hit, and grants bonus damage for 5 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. Now, this is a level 1 effect. This is a bad roll, but if you have 2 maxed out Fierce Attacks, it's looking a bit differently. So now it's, instead of 1.5% of their current HP, it's 21.5% of their current HP. That's no more than 150% of your attack, and grants you going from 8% to 60% damage increase. With the it's still 5 seconds, but instead of a 20-second cooldown, it's now a 15-second cooldown. So you can now do this more often. And it went from up 1/4 of the time to 1/3 of the time. So Fierce Attack becomes a lot better, right? And Fierce Attack is going to be a great PvE option, as well as if you are going full burst, this is a pretty good PvP option as well. Then we have Fighting Will. Fighting Will is one that doesn't require any kind of trigger. It's always triggering. When a character's normal attack or skill hits an enemy, gain a stack of Fighting Will that lasts for 4 seconds. Each stack gives damage increase up to 5 times. When it's stacked to the max, you get an additional Pierce rate. 1 second cooldown because it's always triggering. This is effectively saying you can only get 1 stack of Fighting Will every second. If you hit them with multiple skills super quick, it's only going to count every second. So you're getting damage increase and pierce rate, but at max, it's going to be 2.7% damage per stack, which you could have 5. And then the pierce rate is jumping from 1.5% to 13.5%. This is why I did the stats explained video yesterday, so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about when I'm explaining what these give you, what's going on here. Fighting Will is going to be very good if you're staying on one Flower Fairy team. And in one prolonged fight, for example. Now that they've made some changes to how the seasonal fairy stuff works, if we have like a Darkness Coliseum for a seasonal event, You cannot change fairy teams, and it's a longer fight. So Fighting Will becomes a very, very strong choice in that mode. Mantra, quickly becoming one of the best ones all around. After releasing a Flower Fairy skill, you get a stack of Mantra, which increases your attack and defense. Each stack can stack up to 3 times, but it lasts 6 seconds. So you want to keep using fairy skills, and you're getting a lot of extra attack and defense. 1.4 doesn't sound like a lot, but what about 14? 14, 28, 42% attack and defense. You do more damage, you tank more damage. Remember, after all the other stats are said and done, attack minus defense equals damage. So you deal more damage and you're tankier for everything. This is one of the best PvE ones, as well as pretty good in PvP if you were just swapping fairies over and over again. Rigidity. This is primarily one for a squishier player in PvP, so you don't die to one shot, and allows you to do your combo. So after you take hits 3 times, gets a shield and damage reduction. Now this is in direct contrast with what we talked about with Fierce Attack. Fierce Attack, hit 3 times. Rigidity, be hit 3 times. So they kind of trigger each other. Theoretically, the shield would block the damage, and the damage increase would counteract the damage reduction. So we would go from 1.5% shield with an 8% reduction to a 17% shield and a 36% damage reduction. Pretty big. God Bless. This is for longer PvP fights. This will give you the most stats in the game, but only matters once you stack it up in long drawn out fights. Get 1 stack of God Bless every 2 seconds, stacking 6 times. It gives you block and tenacity, and at 5 stacks it gives you damage reduction. But when you max it out, 5% block and tenacity, and 2.5% protection rate, stacking 5 times, and then at max 20% damage reduction. Pretty big. Now down into the generations. This one's a bit better because it's easier to show you what's going on. 1 to 12 is hard to put together, but 1 to 4 is pretty easy. So first is going to be Break Free. This is your crit focused one. If your build is focused around critting, this is what you want. And after triggering a core skill, you get crit rate, crit damage. And if you have your 4 active fairies all have Break Free, you get the level 4 effect, which is 15% crit rate and 54% crit damage. No reduction to the cooldown, that's kind of important. And what it's saying here, Fighting Will and God Bless will not be triggered, because they're always triggering. Now, I've had some questions, can you use Fighting Will with this? Yes, but you need to have another one that will affect it. Remember, 2 6s make 12, so the ideal setup is you have 4 fairies, you have 2 level 6s of one type, and you have 2 level 6s of another type. These 12 may not activate Break Free, but it's not turning you off of being able to use Break Free. It's saying these won't trigger it, but these can. So if you have, let's say, Slaughter over here, there's actually some more that I skipped, it looks like. Yeah. There's some more right here. I'll talk about them in a second. But if I have some that I'm missing, this won't trigger it, but these will, and then you'll still get the Break Free effect. I'm sorry about skipping a couple. We have Nightmare. Forget this one exists. Duration of debuffs plus 20%. When causing debuffs, chance of getting an attack bonus. At max, Duration of debuffs plus 40%, which is pretty nice if you're trying to do a stun focus. If you're just there to be a stun bot, this is okay. And then you ignore the attack bonus, which is better, but 25% you're never going to work with that. But the plus 40% duration of debuffs is pretty nice. It's just what is considered a debuff is the issue here. Instinct, after dodge, heal max HP, immune to knockup and knockback. Issue here being the percent of heal, which goes up to about 20%, 18-second cooldown. Everyone's getting one shot in PvP, so this ends up not really mattering. And the immunity knockup and knockback, pets make you immune to it. Several of skills are immune to it. Even the priest is immune to it. Ends up not mattering ever. And then slaughter, the most important one in the game in my opinion. If you hit someone that's under 60% HP, you deal percent damage and percent of your attack. The lower their HP, the more damage it is. And lowering their movement speed for a short while, it's literally 1 second with a 15-second cooldown. And at max, more damage. It still has to be under 60, more damage, and the cooldown goes from 15 seconds to 8 seconds. So more damage more often. Slaughter is the best one in my opinion, period, the end. Next we have Super Strength. Super Strength is primarily good for people stacking HP. It gives you effectively the Gladiator passive, which is already pretty strong, as an effect. So, but this is only when triggering core skill, which is why Fighting Will and God Bless will not trigger it, but if you have something else, then it will. For example, we just read Slaughter. If you slaughter someone, then you will get the Super Strength trigger, even if you have Fighting Will or God Bless on your others. So this is, if you want to do something like this, what you'll generally see for a tankier player is particularly something like Slaughter and God Bless generally goes together. And then Super Strength, once you trigger Slaughter, this will make it easier for you to actually kill them. Then we have Fighting Will Strike. There's two of these. There's one for Fighting Will, one for God Bless, that only interacts with the particular core skill. When Fighting Will is maxed, you get a bunch of cooldown, which 21% cooldown is nice, but this needs that to work. So I would only suggest using this in that particular situation I talked about before. If you have a PvE game mode where you cannot switch fairies against a big HP boss, this is probably one of the best in slots. Everything else doesn't really matter. God Bless Heal is the other side of this. This one might be confusing for some people. When God Bless is stacked to the max, gain a healing bonus, so you're tankier, you're healing yourself more. Meanwhile, lifesteal effects from other players generated through you is reduced by 60%. Now that means if you're attacking someone who has lifesteal and they're hitting you, the amount they're lifestealing off of you is reduced by 60%. This part generally isn't the most effective because most healing is done through other effects, either through their passives, through their skills, but the actual lifesteal healing is generally kind of low. Remember, most skills are AoE, and the healing off of the lifesteal healing off of AoE is 14% of damage done. So they're healing 14%, and you're reducing it by 60% of the 14% of their damage done. So this part generally doesn't matter. If you want to go this direction, you're generally going this way for the 30% healing amp. But I believe a better tank option is going to be Smart Shift. If you heal from a non-lifesteal way, generally from a passive, a skill, a pet, a fairy, anything, then you gain protection rate and defense bonus for 3 seconds, which is pretty low for 10 seconds. But when you max this out, it's way more, so 18% protection rate, 12% defense for 6 seconds out of 10-second cooldown. So you can have it up 60% of the time, which if you time it out is pretty good. This one is a trap, Plunder. You heal for a percentage of the damage done by your flower fairies. We're at a point where a lot of fairies heal you themselves, or in most game modes it doesn't matter the healing from these. Then we have two of the most interesting ones. Fast speed, which is just movement speed after dodge, 35% movement speed after dodge for 3 seconds. This used to be very important with Wind Chaser, that had a skill called Spin Kick that gave you a damage increase based on your movement speed, but that's no longer around. This could be interesting if you're doing a Wind Echo, particularly for Camellia, because the tornado is based on your movement speed, so this could be nice, but anything else, ignore it. Next is Vigor Wind. This is a deceptively powerful one, dodge minus 40%. Now, at base, dodge has a 5-second cooldown. With this, it ends up being 3.2 seconds, but it rounds 3 seconds. Sorry, 2.8 seconds. It rounds, it's 3 seconds. Now, remember, this gives you invulnerability. The only thing that ignores this is Mistletoe's cage. If you try to dodge out of the cage, that ignores your vulnerability. But this is something that's very, very powerful and is a very decent PvP option if you play around it correctly. This is one of my favorites in PvP, and that's Soul Hunt. If someone is decelerated, immobilized, or stunned, 30% damage bonus. If you're not doing crit, this is a great way to have bonus damage. Especially with classes like Judge or Wind Chaser, where you're doing lots of slows and immobilizes, or even if you're doing an Earth Echo that has a lot of stuns. This is a very, very powerful one. Now, for the second best PvE option, we have Sprout a Flower. It increases your Flower Fairy's cooldown by a pretty big margin and gives them a damage boost. But at 4 stacks, it only increases it by 10% and gives you an 82% damage bonus. So this plus Mantra, plus anything else you want to increase damage, ends up being the best in slot PvE combination if you're swapping fairies, if you're doing a rotation. If you're doing at max a 4 fairy team rotation, then this is going to be right in line. This 10% isn't going to make you miss any fairies, and you're just getting an 82% increase in Flower Fairy skill cooldown. But you have to have 4 sets of Sprout a Flower on all of your on all your 4 teams of 4 set fairies. If you have anything less than that, even at 15%, you're going to start clipping, you're going to start missing cooldowns. But that's it, guys. That's explained what's going on. As far as what you should use for each class, I have those cheat sheets, which are on the channel as well as on the Discord. Hope that helped you all out. Until next time, guys.